Good morning. 20 years ago, my dad died of cancer. I bought my first computer and I started to write a book back then. I was self-taught on the computer and I would save my stuff on a floppy disk, and eventually I got another computer and the floppy disk I couldn't read on the new one, and I got sidetracked, and eventually I started writing more and speaking, and then after a while I thought of YouTube and stuff, and I got sidetracked on my book, and it was called Dark Secrets. Um, Dark secrets, we all have dark secrets, and everyday life, I'm not going to rat out my family or friends about my dark secrets. These are things that I've kept to myself so I wouldn't hurt or offend others. I realize that the world's made up of the CIA, FBI, organized crime, and everyday people. And as long as there's money and politics and whatnot, people aren't always going to play by the rules. But we all find our lane and we all do the best that we can. I'm not someone that's going to try to point out everyone's faults and make everybody walk a righteous straight line. Like I said, we all find our own lane and try to do the best we can. I was born in 1953 to James Redmond Waddell and Mary Elizabeth Waddell. I had 3 older brothers when I arrived: Bob, Tom, and Mark. I believe there was another baby born that didn't make it before me. When I was born, my parents broke the mold. They were blessed with a cerebral palsy baby. Hey, I never felt cheated in this life for having cerebral palsy. I never asked anybody to feel sorry for me either. Here's a picture of my mother, Mary Elizabeth Waddell. When I was 2 years old, my mother had bone cancer, and this could possibly be a reason why I was born with cerebral palsy. I don't really know. I remember about 30 years ago when my brother Rick got married, this lady, Helen, came up to me and asked me, "John, do you think you were born with cerebral palsy because your mother had bone cancer and maybe was taking medication? Or that she was sick before while she had you?" And I said, Helen, I don't really care. And it didn't really matter. In a way, it kind of pissed me off because what is, and I was always born this way. This was normal for me. Never felt cheated by God or anything else. Anyway, my mother went to Lourdes, France when I was 2 years old with my Grandma Rogers to pray in a holy temple. People thought she was going to pray for her cancer. She went to pray for my dad and my brothers and others that she loved. My grandma heard her praying, and she heard her say that the reason why she made the trip was to pray for me. I was not walking or talking. With cerebral palsy, quite often speech and walking and talking are delayed. But it is also not uncommon for people with my disability not to be able to speak or talk, which I have met many in my life. It was 1956 and my mom came back from her journey and passed away shortly after on Good Friday. I'm not sure how old I was when I became aware of this, maybe 7 or 8 years old. My parents never talked much about it. They probably didn't want to make me feel like I owed my mother something. I would have told her to stay home and that she could pray in her room and be with my dad and my brothers if I could have. I probably would have said something like, God hears you wherever you are. One dark secret that I remember at this age that I put on myself was to be a good boy and never feel sorry for myself, because my mom, I imagined her pain throughout her whole body and how she traveled clear around the world to pray for me. I have no real memory of my mother. I heard she was outgoing and loving, and her journey really touched me. But I really didn't talk much about it with others a lot, too, because, well, who do you think you are, a bag of chips or something like that? I just was really touched by my mother's journey and her faith in God and the sacrifice she did for me before she died. My dad remarried a year later, Joy Murphy, and she became my mother, which I'll show you a picture later in my next video. The best mom on the planet, and she helped me soar at a young age. She had a daughter, Carolyn, older than me, a son, Tim, and a son, Jim, all who were older than me. I have known them all my life, and I love them just the same as my biological brothers and other sister. Our parents, after they got married, had a boy, Bill, then Rick, and then my sister, Sue. We became his, hers, and ours. We had 10 kids. I started to walk and talk about 6 or 8 weeks after my mother passed away. At age 5, my hands closed up like this. I didn't really like my hands much because when people looked at them, I could see, well, they feel uncomfortable around looking at me. And if I had to shake their hand, sometimes they didn't know how to grab it, or I had a hard time putting my hand into their hand. So I noticed that they would feel uncomfortable. So I decided to try to learn to read their body language, their eyes and their facial expressions and their voice tones. And if it got too hard for them, they felt too uncomfortable. They go, yeah, hi. And I wasn't really happy that my parents, encouraged me, kind of forced me to shake hands, but I'm glad that they did, because after a while it got me to appreciate that I had these hands in the first place. So I've always hated to make people feel uncomfortable. And by the time I was 8, I could dress and do everything by myself, so I became thankful that I was taught to not make a big deal out of my hands. At the age of 5, I also knew that I was different than my brothers and sister. I knew I enjoyed looking at men. I knew that I enjoyed company of older men and talking to men. And I remember, I didn't know the word gay or homosexual, but I knew that I was different and that I should keep this secret to myself. Once there was a family friend called the Connells, and they had 10 kids like us. They must have been good Catholics like we were. Anyway, we had this Halloween thing, and those wax lips you had to put on your mouth and stuff, and Candy was my age, 5 years old, and I remember our family saying, Johnny, give Candy a kiss with those lips. And I went, thinking, like a lot of kids at that age, I don't want to kiss a girl. yucky. But on my face, I thought, ooh, I better change my expression because people would know that I really don't like girls at all in that way, and that I knew I never would. So anyway, we did. I changed my facial expression. I kissed her, and oh yeah, that's funny. And I learned at that age, well, I'm just gonna hide this and keep it to myself. Anyway, as I became older, I realized through the Catholic faith that I should hide it. It was, after all, 1958 when I became aware. And then the next chapter I'm going to talk about is Rossmore, California, where I asked God for a miracle. And throughout these videos, I'll share my journey. And other people have told me, well, you've listened to people and their problems all their life, and maybe you should share some of your stories. So that's what I'm going to do. And I hope that people feel free to share these videos. And maybe someday other people take more interest and I can get them more out there. And so I hope you enjoy them and have a good day. Remember, we all have secrets, but we all share what we want with others in this life. And I don't share to hurt others or for fame or glory, just to share my experiences so others realize that they're not alone, like it often at times I felt that I was. And maybe it'll help others that maybe don't want to keep on living or think about giving up on life and others and themselves. And maybe it'll help them keep going forward. Thank you. Have a good day. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye for now.